So yeah, I'll be talking about breaking the Einstein code and particularly proven strategies to productive thinking, right? So a lot of people want to be like Einstein, like, genius level, intellect, come up with a theorem or, a law or something that, would revolutionize the world and all that. Everybody wants to do that. But the truth is that everybody can be a genius in their ways if they can only learn, strategies to productive thinking. There's this, age-long debate about are geniuses born or are they made, or something like that. And people talk about, hey, genius is by nature. Other people say, no, it's nurture. But the truth is that genius is actually a fusing of the two, both nature and nurture, okay? So it means that whoever appears not to have, maybe been born to someone who, or parents who seem to be very bright, that person doesn't need to be afraid or scared that, hey, they missed out on a genetic, lottery or something like that. No, you didn't miss out on a genetic lottery because every single person can, build strategies to begin to think exceptionally. All right. And that's what I'm about to share with you. Realizing that as a copper or, as a recent graduate, or somebody who has been in the marketplace, the workplace for about 1 year, 2 years, might be finding it very hard to find your fit. You might be finding it hard to distinguish yourself, right? It seems as though, what you do is trite, it's common, everybody does it. So nothing really stands out about what you do. But as I share with you today, I believe you're going to experience a mind shift by which you're going to, come into a new level of life, a new level of thoughts, a new level of, breakthrough in all that you do in the workplace. Okay, so I'll be starting with a quote by Thomas Edison. All right. So this quote is actually very interesting. I love the quote. I've used it quite a number of times, and I'm using it here again. 5% of the people think, 10% of the people think they think, and the other 85% will rather die than think. Okay, so one of the things Cognizant is, about is that we want to actually help the 10% of people who think they think to make the transition from assumptions to reality. So they stop thinking they think to actually thinking. And the 85% who rather die than think want to show them that, hey, thinking does not bite. It's not a rabid dog that, will bite you or something. We want to show them that thinking could be a delightsome experience. It could be something that, makes life, better all around. The quality of life, just, moves up, with so much value because of, thinking well. And the 5% of people who think, the interesting thing is that everybody who has started thinking cannot stop thinking today and expect that, they would still retain the quality of the mind they have built over the years. So we never stop learning. We never stop thinking. We never stop learning to think how to think, that kind of thing. So Cognizant is, wanting to help people to think, to come into new measures of productive knowledge by which they can actually transform, particularly the African continent. We want to help Africans unleash their capacity to think. And what better way than to start with those who are entering into the workforce, and that's why we put together this program. Those who are entering the workforce are fresh, they are still open to new ways of doing things. They are not yet, fixed in their tracks. Oh, this is how they do things. This is how, things happen. If you understand, culture is very strong to break. You find it almost, impossible to break some kind of cultures that have already been established over the years. But those who have not found themselves within such rigid bureaucracies and all those kind of things can actually be helped to make that leap right now, so that when they come into the workplace, they are able to navigate their way, intuitively and intelligently, and make the best out of life for themselves and for everybody they serve through what they are doing. Okay, so 5% of the people think, 10% of the people think they think, and the other 5% would rather die than think. But it's possible for the 10% to shift to actually thinking, and the 85% to also move from being, having a phobia for thinking. Imagine, like, having a phobia for thinking to actually doing real thinking. All right, so I'm going to talk about three strategies basically. And these three strategies If you put your mind to them, if you apply your mind to them, I can assure you, they've made a tangible, what's called impact on my life. I've taught more than 3,000 people in offline, online courses. You know, you know, I've spoken with government officials, taught them about critical thinking and creative thinking, taught educators about cognitive thinking skills, and every time I talk with people, it's like a light bulb just comes on. I remember a particular cohort of trainees I was taking through critical thinking and creative thinking, and the young man who is a master student, couldn't help but exclaim and said, "It seems as if my brain has been asleep all these years. It's finally coming to life. I'm finally seeing what my brain should be doing." And that kind of stunned me because, well, that person is hardly given to exaggeration, right? And so he was a master's student. But you see, it's possible to go through your educational, journey in university and even, up to the master's level, and yet you're just still doing rote memorization. You're doing basically, the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy, which is more like, just spitting out what you have, heard, not processing it, not understanding it, not creating new knowledge from what you have learned, and that's basically where many, many Nigerians and Africans find themselves. They are that level of the Bloom's taxonomy, that's a model for understanding what level of thinking you're doing, and what level of cognition you're experiencing in your learning process. And basically, most of what we are taught in the academic institutions around us are on that level of rote memorization. I mean, there is really no desire to see people being original, and that is affecting our continent. That's putting a strain on the kind of growth we should be experiencing. So we're experiencing growth with fossil fuels and raw materials. We are hardly creating new things from the raw materials. So we ship out raw materials because other countries have developed, their thinking capacity to see how to extract more value, increasing value from the raw materials that we export to them. And then they sell these things back to us at very exorbitant prices. So that has been a major issue with us in Africa. But with this course, this little module that I'm sharing with us today, I believe so strongly that those who pay attention to what I'm sharing will experience tremendous shift. And you'll discover that you will not be able to think on the level you've been thinking before. There will be a radical transformation in how you think. So the first strategy I'm going to talk about is that you pursue metacognition, all right? It's a strategy to pursue metacognition, to seek to, own it as your lived reality, okay? So I'm just going to define metacognition according to what Vanderbilt University, put out. Metacognition is, put simply, thinking about one's thinking. It includes a critical awareness of, one, your thinking and learning, and two, yourself as a thinker and a learner. Very, very, to the point definition. It is simply thinking about your thinking. A lot of people don't think about their thinking. That's why they repeat the same mistakes again and again and again. That's why if a particular course material is introduced to them, after they are done with it, they don't actually derive any new body of knowledge, understood knowledge for that matter, from that material, right? And this is what happens a lot of times because people don't, how I call it, they have not arrived at that self-awareness. They've not arrived at that critical awareness of their own thinking and learning. And they've also not arrived at the realization that they're a thinker and a learner. It's very important that you are able to give yourself that label and embrace it. I'm a thinker, I'm a learner. If anyone is willing to embrace that definition for themselves, what happens is that you never approach anything without thinking about it because you've told yourself that you're actually a thinker and a learner. So you approach everything with the intention to think about it. You're not going to swallow things hook, line, and sinker because every Tom, Dick, and Harry are swallowing stuff. You're not going to be one swayed by public opinion when you realize that the public is actually, on a journey to, to foolishness and folly and all of that. But because You're self-aware. You're not moving with, that herd mentality. You're not moving with that, sense of, hey, that's what everybody's saying right now. No, you're a thinker, so you're able to scrutinize every single thing. All right. So in a paper titled Why People Fail to Recognize Their Own Incompetence, the authors noted, the authors are below, Dunning, Johnson, Ellinger, and Kruger. The authors noted that people tend to be blissfully unaware of their incompetence, lacking insight about deficiencies in their intellectual and social skills. This is a very, very, very important thing to note. A lot of people live and move around with blind spots to their intellectual and social incompetencies, and they are not aware. So they are blissfully unaware, they are blissfully ignorant. And yet they assume that they know. They assume that their opinions really hold water, when in actual fact they don't. And most of the time, people like this, they get very touchy. They get very, they get very touchy when you challenge what they are saying. They feel like, oh no, how dare you challenge what I've just said? And that happens a lot, in Africa, where culture has really bound us to, not challenge, some certain things, right? So people say, hey, this is how it is done. And then everybody, yeah, this is how it is done. I remember a story of, a barracks, a barracks for the military. And then they were meant to paint a part of the walkway, for parades and all of that. So when they painted that spot, they brought huge, blocks of stones, huge slabs of concrete to ensure that nobody will walk across, the newly painted strip. So before the paint dried, or just immediately after the paint dried, they moved the person who gave the instruction for the concrete slabs to be put to shield, that strip of, that strip of the walkway. So they moved him away from that command, and they brought somebody else. Now, while that strip was still wet with paint, the pathway to get to the office was quite clumsy. So people had to go, train roundabout route to arrive, at the entrance to the office. But when this other man, then after that, after the slabs were put there, then they also positioned soldiers to guard, the slabs, so that if people say, hey, I didn't see the slab, they'll say, but there was a soldier there or something like that. So there were soldiers guarding the slabs of concrete. And then the next thing was that after the, change of, office was carried out, this new chief observed soldiers standing by concrete slabs and felt it was the tradition of that barracks. So they now began a rotation of, soldiers guarding that strip without anybody really knowing why. This went on for years, until when a new chief came in, he asked them, why are soldiers having to stand there? And people said, we don't really know what happened. We don't know how it came to be. And then he had to find out. So he asked his predecessor. The predecessor said, I met this way. And then the predecessor said it was before I arrived that, it was, instituted. So this new chief asked the first predecessor, and that one said, oh wow, it was just to guard the strip of paint so people wouldn't, step on it. And the shock of it, the folly of years of guarding something that was worthless because nobody thought it fit to ask questions, stared, that new chief in the face. And that's what a lot of people do. They keep guarding, they keep recycling old things that are no longer relevant at this time because they are blissfully ignorant of their own incompetences, and particularly intellectual and social skills. So metacognition helps you to put your thinking under scrutiny. It helps you to hold a microscope, a magnifying glass to your thinking, so you can identify the patterns. You can identify why you think the way you think, why your thinking is ineffectual and why it is effective, right? So there are some questions that I would share with you that you can ask yourself, by which you can actually pursue metacognition, all right? So the following questions will actually help you, to dive into metacognition and to own it as your reality. For instance, you're coming across a new subject matter or a new material, or you're even studying for something at work, or in, maybe you're pursuing a postgraduate degree and all of that. and then you have a topic you are encountering for the first time, or something you have encountered before. This question can open you up to these questions can actually open you up to better insight into how you think. So what do I already know about this topic that could guide my learning? So that's the first thing. So before even trying to learn, you're already creating sort of, lesson notes. Teachers do that. They create lesson notes and they create, goals for each lesson. What is the end in view and all of that? But this time around, the first question is, what do I already know about this topic? So for instance, you want to read about quantum physics. And so you want to know what you already know about the topic that will guide your learning. So you've heard that, hey, quantum physics is this or that or that. And then you're like, okay, this is what I know. Okay, let me try to research a bit along the lines of what I know. So most of the times when you start with what you know, you're most likely going to, come into other things you never knew. All right. So that's one of the ways that you can guide your learning. You are taking charge of your cognitive processes. All right. Number 2 question would be, what was most confusing to me about this subject matter I just explored? So you finish studying maybe 2 articles or 3 about quantum physics, and then you're like, okay, what was most confusing to me? And then you are asking, why were they confusing? Is it that my vocabulary, the words they use in this subject matter, or in the articles I read, is it that I'm not familiar with, the language? Is it that these are technical languages that I need to go get the register for, this particular field to understand better? Or is it that this person is using idiomatic expressions that I can't connect with or something? So what was most confusing to me about the subject matter I just explored? So, for instance, stand-up comedy in America, if Nigerians are listening to it, many Nigerians would not know when to laugh because the contexts are quite different. The anecdotes that Americans can easily relate to, they don't mean a thing to us in Nigeria. So while the Americans are roaring with laughter, the Nigerian guy or the Kenyan guy will be like looking at them and wondering, what's funny about this? But that's because the person either is missing out on the cues that that are meant to result in humor or something like that. So for you to pursue metacognition, this is one of the ways to do it, to find out exactly, to reflect on your learning, to reflect on your cognition. All right. What was most confusing to me about this subject matter I just explored? Another one is, before, this is not a question, but before encountering this topic, I thought XYZ was this. Now I think that XYZ is this. So for instance, maybe you thought quantum physics was something that was still in an undeveloped form, right? It's still something abstract, like it has not yet, become practical. And then after you've, studied the topic, you now realize that, oh, wow, there are many applications of quantum physics that are already being commercialized. And you're like, oh, wow, I never knew. And so you've been able to see the shift, the progression of your thoughts from, being fallacious or being incomplete. So now, you have a more robust, outlook on that topic, all right? Then, the next question, which is similar to what I just mentioned, how is my thinking changing or not changing over time? So for instance, you've thought about relationships, or you've thought about how money works, how money moves. And then you sit down one day and you're trying to track, has my thinking about money changed? Is my time more important than money now? Or is money more important than time right now? Right? So you're trying to track, if 2 years ago you felt your money was more important than your time. So you were always scrounging on, you were always trying to save money, you were always trying to, pinch a penny here, pinch a penny there, and then your time was running. But now, have you moved from thinking that your money is more important than your time to thinking that your time is more important than your money? So the next question is, what are those things I believed or felt were right? Like for instance, okay, if my money is no longer as important as my time, so why did my thinking change? Why did I change my perception about money and time? What happened to me? Did I experience something? Did I listen to somebody? Did I, was it more like, just a kind of epiphany? Or what really happened to me that made my thinking change? What made my opinion change, right? It is people that do this depth of reflection on their thinking that are able to apply what they've learned to future thinking. And then they find out it is easier to, translate things they've discovered in different contexts into newer contexts. And because of that, they can create new knowledge, they can create new perceptions, they can create new insights that become more valuable over time. All right. So the last question is, for instance, you are preparing for an exam or a presentation or an interview, and then after you're done, you ask yourself, what about preparing for that presentation or exam worked well that I should remember to do next time? What did not work so well that I should not do next time, or that I should change? This is a very important, line of thought to pursue. So maybe you had a presentation over Zoom, maybe 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, and then everybody applauded you. So the question to ask is, what made them applaud me? The highest, the best I've experienced before now is that one person will say, wow, good job. But for every single person to say, wow, amazing, mind-blowing job, what did I do differently this time around? How did I prepare for this? Did I play a jazz music? Did I play jazz music before, while preparing for the presentation? Did I take a shower? Or, was it that, I experienced, some good news before I went into that exam or something like that? When you try to trace what happened, you might be able to recreate that same condition prior to any other presentation or exam you are. So pursue metacognition. That's the first strategy. Number two, write well, and write some more. I repeat that, write well, and write some more. That's the number two strategy for productive thinking. Writing is thinking. To write well is to think clearly. That's why it's so hard. A lot of people don't want to write. They don't like to write. They're running from writing. And with the internet age and all of that, and with instant messaging, only a few people send emails on a regular basis, but virtually everybody does WhatsApp, right? Or Twitter, or Telegram, or Signal, or something. But what happens most of the times with such informal conversations is that you don't really put too much effort in how you write. So there is nothing tasking you to think well. You know that, hey, I could delete the message, or hey, I could tell someone that was a typo, or I could tell somebody that, sorry, that was what I meant earlier. But when you're doing emails, with people that you don't know or something like that, you tend to take more time to think through what you're about to send. You tend to be more particular about what word you use, right? And all of that. So to write well is to think clearly. Growing up, I journaled a lot. I still do that from time to time, right? I missed out on some of this because of some responsibilities, but I still do it as often as I can, because I realized that by journaling, I was able to order all the things running around in my mind. And I was able to bring structure to them. I was able to see patterns that I would never have seen, if I never put down the things I wrote. And this began to translate into my business communications and all of that. It was possible to lay out things with clarity. And it also, began to spill out into the things I put on the public space. So people right now read what I write on the public space, and then they're like, amazing. This is a well-structured write-up or something like that. And I've had a number of business, deals coming because of how well I write about, things that are personal to me, or things that don't even have to do with business, just because I have practiced and practiced and practiced writing well. May I tell you, the same way I said genius is not, particularly born, genius is made, the same way, the same way it applies to writing. You don't have to be born a writer to write. You can write well by practice. Consistent practice makes perfect. Okay, so write well, and write some more. So you need to actually make that something definite, something that you give time to. You can set yourself a challenge that I'm going to write 1,500 words every single day for the next 30 days. And you can employ metacognition to also track how you have changed. And your thoughts, more fluid now. Are they complex yet simple to communicate, right? You are able to see the change and the progress you have made by writing. And again, writing well, helps you on two fronts. Number one, it helps you on the front of, doing well in the workplace, because anyone who communicates well, go and read things about Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett and all of them. Most of them do lengthy writing instead of calls, because they know that if they write out what is on their mind, everybody will be able to follow them very clearly as to what they have written as instructions or as directions for their companies. All right. So you write and it gives you an edge, it gives you an advantage in the workplace. Number two, writing helps with networking. Your writing can attract all kinds of people who normally would never know you. If you consistently put out, content on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, for instance, you will find that gradually you build a following of people who are actually interested in what you write because of the value you're passing across. And who knows when you would need those relationships, as you, move up the professional ladder. All right. So it's very important. So I wrote this little note from, I was trying to talk about why I write. So I write as a torch, boring a hole of illumination through dark spaces. Sometimes I do not know where my thoughts will lead me to. But by writing, I find I can put one halting foot in front of another. And the more I write, the steadier my steps get. And then I pick up pace and walk more briskly. So it can start very slowly. It can start like you are, staggering. It can start like you're crawling. But as you dedicate yourself to it, as you commit yourself to it, you find fluidity in your writing. And then you create value that you cannot actually define, what level of value will come from your writing and writing well. All right. So we'll move to the third strategy. Embrace the black art. Embrace the black art. All right. So the black art is actually a concept from Edward de Bono's Six Thinking Arts. So it's a framework for thinking, for creative thinking and for ideation and all of that. So there's a quote by A.A. Milne. It says, the third-rate mind is only happy when it is thinking with the majority. A second-rate mind is only happy when it is thinking with the minority. A first-rate mind is only happy when it is thinking. All right, so the black art is actually the art that plays the devil's advocate whenever people have to think through a problem. They're trying to, get a solution to a problem. They're trying to, put together projects or plans and all of that. And they want to, ideate. They want to, create the map for that, project or something. Most of the times, people fall into the trap of groupthink. That's what everybody says. You just nod your head and said, hey, yeah, anything goes, yeah, we can do it that way. Hey, yeah, I concur. Oh, that was what I wanted to say also, that kind of thing. We see that so abundantly around us, where people, will just jump on what somebody has said because it sounds nice or it sounds, it sounds wise enough or something like that. But many times, allowing yourselves do that, allowing yourself lower the bar will come back to bite you. That's why you as a person have to embrace the black art. I'll talk about it. But what are the things that the black art will do for you? You become an asset. Everybody wants to see somebody who is willing to, respectfully punch holes in the things that, they're about to make happen. So the black art is that concept or that state of mind where you're trying to see everything that can go wrong, with a project or a plan or an idea. You're trying to see everything that can go wrong. So if somebody says, hey, we have a watertight, plan, you're like, can you share it with me? And the person is sharing, you're like, hey, I'm not trying to be pessimistic here, but I'm trying to ensure that we're able to cover our bases. We're able to identify every loophole and block them. So what about this? What if electricity fails? What if the dollar dips? What if this happens? What if that happens? And then when a person is what's it called, owning the black art, what happens is that the blind spots of everybody on that team trying to make that project happen, the blind spots are suddenly exposed. And then everybody has to go back to the drawing board again to answer the questions to all those potential problems that could crop up while trying to execute the project. So what happens, with a person that identifies with the black art and demonstrates it, is that you're able to catch costly gaps and oversights before they ruin projects and plans. There is nobody who sees a person that respectfully administers the black art that would not consider that person an asset, that would not always want the person on their team, because they realize that they're going to save them from a lot of shame or ridicule down the line, because they will catch the possible challenges that they are blind to, right? And what happens when a black art has his way is that when he has laid bare every vulnerability of a plan or a project, greater creativity is unlocked that way. Suddenly, because previously unidentified problems are now thrown up, everybody has to, go back to creative mode. So in the six thinking arts, the creative art is the green art, all right? So everybody has to put on the green art and begin to think, okay, how do we solve this problem? How do we creatively, maneuver our way, navigate and, come up with a solution to this problem, okay? So the three things I've shared with you are very crucial strategies to productive thinking. Number one, pursue metacognition. That's number one. Pursue metacognition. You cannot go wrong when you pursue metacognition. Number two, write well, and write some more. As I said, you're going to be creating a lot of capital, social capital for yourself within your workplace. And you're also going to be creating global social capital because the earth is flat right now, right? The globe is flat. And since it is flat, you don't have to be in Australia to get people that consider you an authority in a field because of the content you've been putting out consistently. And what happens is that beyond just having a paycheck coming monthly, you can suddenly begin to be consulted on that thing that you have become so good at. You become an expert in, all right? And that's because, there could be very good programmers, amazing software developers, and they don't write anything, right? They don't write anything. They're very reticent, they don't want, a public spotlight and all of that. But there are some software developers who are more vocal, who are more, public facing, and they keep writing about their experiences, how they develop this, how they develop that. What happens is that in the evaluation of people, they will feel that the person who can both develop software and also write about it must be an expert at it. And so the juicy job offers will most likely go to that person because they've been seeing consistent content coming from that person. And so that perception of being an expert, is what everybody has about that person. So number two, write well, and write some more. Okay. Then number three, embrace the black art. Be the one that helps people see the loopholes in the way they're thinking, in the way they're, trying to plan a project, in the way they're ideating, but do it respectfully. Do it with all measure of, respect and all measure of, empathy, so that you don't come up as being, just a troublemaker, a pessimist, somebody who just wants to, bust everybody's bubbles and cause everybody to feel sad and all of that. When you do it respectfully, people will begin to seek you out to get your opinion about, knotty issues, all right? So these three strategies that I've shared with you, if you pursue them, if you work on them, you can be sure that you would experience productive thinking like never before. So thank you for listening to me. And, I'm on Twitter at Jesudamilare AD. I look forward to you doing amazing things with what you have learned this evening. And I trust that you've been tremendously helped. Thank you so much. So I can, take questions right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, JG. Thank you. That was an awesome session.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a question. Okay, so at the beginning of your presentation, sir, you made mention of detecting blind spots.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask that there's this thing that people used to do. They'll send, let me rephrase that. There's this thing that people used to do, write me anonymous notes and all of that. I want to ask that because there is saying that you can't really know yourself until people tell you about who you are. So I want to ask, is that like the best strategy on detecting your own blind spot, or there's a strategy, there's another way by which one can detect a blind spot? Do you understand my question, sir?
I got your question. All right, yeah. So I think there are frameworks and there are tools that you can easily use to detect your blind spots. There are 360-degree reviews that your team members, your superiors, and your subordinates at your workplace can feel, because many a times you might not know exactly who you are until people are able to point your attention to them. So I think there are templates online. Even if you're not presently in a workplace, you can actually just share with people who know you, who you have worked with officially before or unofficially, and you can send people who are above you that they should candidly, what's it called? They should candidly review you on a certain scale. Like they should um, help you. They should evaluate you on a certain scale. Like for instance, uh, do I take feedback easily? On a scale of 1 to 5, something like that. 5 could be you don't take feedback. 1 could be yes, you take feedback, or something like that. Or 5 could be yes, you take feedback. 1 could be nada, you don't take feedback. Then another thing is, is my business communication, is it top notch? And so people that you have worked with can easily, give a 360-degree view of you, right? And I feel that you can actually get templates of that online. And what is important about such reviews is not just for you to feel defensive and like, hey, how could somebody have rated me 1 or 0 or something like that? I mean, that person doesn't know me at all. I mean, there's this African saying that there's no smoke without fire. In essence, if somebody rated you 0, it's possible that there is something you are not aware of that made the person rate you 0 on a particular skill that you felt, hey, I should do very well at this. So it's very essential that you ask people who are your seniors, people who are your contemporaries, and people who are your subordinates, all right, to be able to get a 360-degree kind of. And then there are templates that touch on virtually every aspect of your life in the workplace. I hope I answered your question.